Okay, hello. Thank you so much for doing this. Luz, let me start asking you where you were born, where you are right now, and maybe some story that connects those two places.
Sure. I think you may know already, but my name is Dr. Luz Claudio, like you know, and I'm from Puerto Rico originally. I come from a big family, huge family. We we come from the countryside of Puerto Rico, and one of my uncles emigrated to New York when when he was very young and started a company here, fourth grade education, no English, and he's a multimillionaire now. So that I had that example, and I applied for medical school here. I got in, and I came, followed my uncle's footsteps.
That's amazing. And like I'm so interested in the work that you are doing to create this kind of opportunities for scientists, from not only from the United States but from developing countries and many parts in the world. So having this background that you have, being born in Puerto Rico, living in the one of the epicenters of the world, that is New York, how do you see the world today, Luz? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? And what is your take on the world and where it's going?
Oh, it's such a complicated question, but to me, you have to choose how to think and you have to like consciously decide that. And when you have like I have a little a small child, and so do you. And when you have children, you have to believe that things are going to get better, that are going to be better for them, and that you can do something about getting them better for them. You have to choose to think that way, otherwise you will never reproduce. I think so. um there are so many areas of the world that are better for certain people, and some that are worse for certain people, and some people who just go along life and are not really impacted by such things. But when we think of climate change and what is projected to happen, and how even as recently as the COP meetings, and we can't agree on trying to survive on this earth. It makes you feel like very pessimistic. Uh, on the other hand, we've never lived better as a society. In fact, I was talking to a childhood friend yesterday, my friend Carmen, and she and I were just marveling about Puerto Rico, and how our parents, we're both from the countryside of Puerto Rico, and our parents lived without running water or electricity in their homes. They lived in wooden shacks with tin roofs. My mom is only 75. She slept in a hammock with 10 other kids. Um, and she's still alive. She uses Facebook. She goes to the casino now. I mean, in a lifetime, she's experienced having to go to the stream to get water, and and using the latrine, and now having a fabulous house with two bathrooms and internet. And so, and I myself, I'm the oldest of five kids. When I was in my teenage years, I had to go to the stream to bathe with my cousins. I experienced not having a phone, and I experienced um, frequent blackouts. The electricity wasn't reliable, and my youngest brother didn't experience that. I mean, in within that time, he's 12 years younger than me, And within that time, my parents had indoor plumbing. My parents had more reliable, you know, electricity. Within our own generation, we experienced such differences. And now I tell stories to my daughter about having to go to the stream to get water, and she doesn't believe me. She thinks that I'm making this up. But Puerto Rico is a perfect example, I think, of how for many countries and many people, things have advanced so quickly, and we don't really appreciate that. And our generation is, it's in the middle of this. We're comfortable with the analog version of things. I did my share of mixtapes, recordings, and things like that. And we are comfortable with the digital parts of of uh, massive computing and the things that we do in our science. So it's really, I think, interesting to see the magnitude of the changes in not just our science. You and I used to have to, for my thesis, I used to have to copy things in the um, in the copy machine to get my research papers, and now we have everything at hand, and we experience all that change so quickly. So in those things, to answer your question, things are better. I just don't think we as the human race have evolved fast enough. We are evolving, and I see, for example, my daughter being a digital native doesn't have to read instructions to know how to work on some new device or things like that. Um, but we're not evolving fast enough with the changes that have happened in the world. Obviously, like we were mentioning about vaccine hesitancy and things like that. It's like I feel like we have not evolved to the level to catch up with the advances that we've had. And
Okay,
so
I want to pick in this idea. So you said like a lot of interesting things, Luz, but I got curious. Like, if we asked your mother this question, what do you think would be her answer? So,
I'm
like,
going to ask her. I'm going to ask her this question when I see her in
yeah,
Puerto Rico
please,
for
and then
Christmas.
then let's and then please let me know, and we are going to add as a comment to the episode, because of course and like you said, in our lifetime we went from making tape recordings and to go making playlists on Spotify, and but they maybe our parents' generation, of course, depending on where they lived. And in some places, they went through war, right? Because my parents were born in 42 and 46. And they were lucky to be born in Brazil, where there was no war. But, like my uncle was a child in Italy and had to fled Italy to Brazil with like his parents fled Italy to Brazil because of war. So um, I keep wondering if this mindset that you said, like we have to choose either to be optimistic or pessimistic, and maybe depending on what you choose, you have arguments to defend one position or another. But I'm wondering if the older generation can see things in a different way and maybe acknowledge all these changes because maybe they were more impactful, right? It's about like not risking of dying from infection or escaping the violence of war. But there was something else that you said that touched me a lot, which is we are not evolving fast enough. And I think a lot about this because, yes, our brain is 1 million years old and it's not evolving and it's not going to evolve. There's no possibility it's going to evolve unless we start to CRISPR it in some more aggressive ways.
Yeah.
There's no way it's going to evolve
You might like
with
to do
this
that.
in the same pace
A
as,
gene drive for people to be more
yes,
knowledgeable
well.
about.
So like I keep thinking that, like our brain is designed, is hardwired for short-term reward with, like dopamine and all these very basic, very primitive in the sense of basic, like of first principles, very basic algorithms that we still have to live with them. And then I'm wondering if mm, this disconnection that you mentioned with, like, wow, it's impossible not to look at the world and not to think that it's better. At the same time, we cannot get to agree to each other on not, like things that, in my opinion, are even more. I believe that getting vaccine is much more obvious and straightforward than climate change. I even understand people, having
It's more
uh,
immediate,
uh,
right?
it's
Hmm.
much more, right? And it's even more verifiable, right? And if, like, the evidence and everything, it's unquestionable. You cannot question the vaccine. There's no, it's like trying to question if the earth is round. Like, unless you want to like there's no questioning. So we is it because of our how we're going to do in the future if our brain stays the same and we cannot agree to so many things that we still have to agree.
You know,
Maybe okay,
right.
okay.
I
So
mean,
like
we.
I didn't give you a question, or like I was more like throwing you ideas. But my next question would be, what are the challenges ahead, right? And then everything that I said just kept me thinking, if this communication challenge, this if communication or living with the limited brain and how to communicate within the framework of this limited brain of ours, if this is the major challenge or is one of the main challenges, or if you see other challenges.
I think the challenge is that our brain has not evolved to the point where we can connect the dots and live in the space and time where it's optimized to what we have. And vaccines is a perfect example. I mean, how is it possible that still some basic, very basic human conditions like tribalism and like um you know so such an egocentric mentality, and the urge to kill each other in wars and not accepting differences, and not just accepting differences. I mean, really fighting differences when we're so interconnected now. That doesn't really matter that somebody is Muslim and somebody is Christian and somebody is Buddhist. I mean, when we can be in a country where that is a predominant belief in 3 hours, or we can walk down the street here in New York and go to Brooklyn and practically be in another culture, right? So, um, to me, the idea that we still have the instinct of fighting the other person, fighting the people who are not like us, tells me that we haven't evolved to accommodate the fact that we are so intermixed now, that we are so close together, uh, by distance and by relationship and by the advances of transportation and even politics and policies. And we haven't evolved to the point where that's normal to us, because we still have that Neanderthal, I guess, impulse of being suspicious and afraid of people who are different. And here in the US, we are dealing with that in the Black Lives Matter and things like that. It's like, really, we still have to say that Black Lives Matter, that all lives matter. We still have to say this. It's because I feel we haven't evolved to the point where we um, have can override that that primitive instinct of being so suspicious of each other, of other people who are different. Um, so, in terms of your question, I feel that the advances we haven't kept up with our own advances, uh, to evolve to the point where that instinct doesn't matter. Where our reasoning can override the instinct, and that's something that I think drives a lot of the problems if we're facing, um, in the current generation. Hmm.
But like, what I'm going to tell you now is something that I've been thinking about really recently, right? Because we do have all these instincts for suspiciousness, for violence, but we also have love is an instinct, right? And we are at the same time hardwired for compassion, for tenderness, and I keep thinking, if uh, um, maybe it's not about and maybe it's not about overriding the instincts, but how do they live together? And okay, maybe if we are stimulating the wrong instincts, okay, or at least maybe like just stimulating one more than another, or stimulating the instinct at the wrong moments.
Well, but the
And
instinct that the loving instinct that you're talking about is about it. It it only applies to people that are like us, right? So you have kids, and you love them no matter what, and that is hardwired in us. But maybe you wouldn't so much like some other random kid on the street. I don't know. You know what I mean? I think that what I'm talking about is the instinct to distrust and to dislike and even to attack people who are not like that. I'm not saying individually. I'm saying as a society.
yeah,
As um, individually, I think we're more alike and we're more accepting, than as a society. One of the things that, for example, recently there was a big stampede in a concert, and 10 people died. It was terrible. There was um, people trampling each other and things like that, and 10 people died just recently. And one of the things that I heard say was that, you know, individually people don't think, oh, I trampled this person. The crowd trampled this person. And when the crowd does it, there's no individual responsibility. And so I think that applies to everything that happens at a large scale, including wars. Are we in a war in the Middle
yeah,
East or in Afghanistan or whatever, or is it a group effort that we don't take individual responsibility for? And so, I mean, I I think that group mentality covers a lot of the individual responsibility.
It's true. Like you're talking, I'm remembering, the book *Sapiens*, where he talks exactly about this: how we create these collective fantasies, and how our species is the only species that we can create these large groups, much larger than that. These groups can be created just with some strong mental fantasies of like a country or a company, or
Hmm.
because we are not close to each other, right? Like people that are far away, that don't know each other, they all identify themselves as a group, and this group can fight another group that also they don't know each other, but they identify themselves as a different group. I'm also remember, it's so interesting for me, this topic of the instincts, and I'm remembering a book that I read. Is a French author, is a French scientist. I don't remember his name, but he's the guy who discovered the major histocompatibility. Um, how to say major histocompatibility component. Oh my God, I forgot the factor. Major histocompatibility factor. And in a passage of his book, he says, like, look, it's obvious that our reason overrides our instincts most of the time. Now he says, like, it would be silly not to believe that our reason can override our instincts, but it would be even more silly to believe that our instincts never overrides our reasoning. So like we
Mm,
are in this
I like that.
yeah, it's not really a dilemma. It's
Hmm.
more like yes, if you let your instincts unchecked, we would be like less collaborative, less cooperative, and we would achieve less as a species. And we probably have, and I read this in other books also, Red Queen by Matt Ridley talks a lot about this, like that we humans have more instincts than other. A lot of what we call reason is because we have more of these instincts for love, for compassion, for cooperation. Um, but to believe that our primitive, our amygdalas, they never take over and execute the very basic program of selfishness would be very naive.
Hmm.
So like I keep thinking how we can but still I believe that maybe we are incentivizing or stimulating some of these um, more individual than collective instincts, and things could be better if we do the opposite. I just don't know if it would be just about education or sharing more good news than bad news, but definitely I think we are like stimulating too much the individual aspects.
I don't know if you know. I've been trying to do this project on uh, health literacy, and actually, I have a book from our friend Federico that is on that. um, I um, I don't know that dumping more information onto people is an answer to that issue. I mean, I really there's so much information. I mean, we know smoking hurts and people still smoke. I mean, so I'm struggling with that dilemma, and I think it's more profound than just education, unfortunately, because
Yeah, I agree
uh,
with you. So
mhm.
like I like to think about dose, right? Which is a concept that you and I, as toxicologists, at some degree understand very well, and the idea that too much or too little or too much is a problem. So like finding the right dose may be the biggest challenge. I never thought about this as one of the biggest challenges ahead, that we still need to find the right dose.
Well, I think also it's not just about the right dose, but about um, the right instinct or motivation to to appeal to. And sometimes what I feel is that it's not more education that we need, is
More
some
incentives.
right, some kind of more primal um
Yeah, I like to call it incentives, like
mhm,
it's the carrot, right?
right, right.
Yeah, so we almost have almost like the nudge, which is
The
like
nudge.
so, like what is the carrot? How do we incentivize people to a better behavior, like appealing to their instincts? If yeah, I agree with you. Maybe that's what I meant with more. I don't think it's more education, and I've been maybe even because I'm studying so much, blockchains and all these systems of governance that applies, that create consensus among people that don't know and don't trust each other. And you see how game theory and the right incentive in the right
Mhm.
place can really drive good behavior, because you are incentivizing good behavior and punishing bad behavior.
There's a
And it's not it. Yeah, that's it, incentivizing
Thaler,
good
yeah, Thaler calls it the nudge and the sludge. So just make it
yeah.
easier to do the good things, and sludging, slowing
Yeah.
down the ones that are hurtful. So I like those terms.
Yes, it's great. So let me, from what you're talking, and your background, I want to ask you how your professional choice of career, if it was influenced by, uh, um, how do you see your professional choice connected with these challenges ahead? And maybe if I can go even further with this challenge of the communication and bringing people together and diversity, which came while we were talking about these two views of the world.
Well, when I first started in the field of medicine, and then research and biomedicine, um, you start out in your 20s with this idea that you're going to cure cancer and eliminate HIV, and and stop climate change and improve the environment all in one lifetime. And I do a lot of interviews with you know applicants for medical school and graduate school, and they all say those things, right? They all say, um, uh, I always wanted to be a doctor since I was a little girl, and um, things like that. And I try not to laugh out loud um, when they tell me those things, and not to. Uh, but I do see that in myself, from that age. I feel now that the idea of our professional life, and maybe the rest of the different parts of our life, is to try to aim to use the best talent that we have, which that's another thing about how to find what that is, to improve what we can around around um the the universe that we're given to influence. So, you know, you you reach out to people with this podcast, and maybe there's some improvements in their lives that you can influence from that, and that's one of your talents, and that's one of the things that you can do. And I have reach in um, the the fellows that I'm able to help train in Latin America, and that's my reach, and my students and my medical and graduate students, and that's my universe where I can improve things using the talent that I have. And so, to answer your question, I think um, my in my professional career has started out with a lot of lofty goals, and now uh, I narrow it down to where I can actually truly have an influence, and truly have an impact that I can actually see and measure and touch and feel, and realize that I have done something, that I have made an impact. Um, so
And isn't this like, and isn't this part of the accomplishment? Because I am one of your accomplishments, right? So like I was one of your fellows, and you know the fellowship that I had in 2005. It was the beginning of my career, and had a lot of impact, you know, because it's a recognition that goes beyond the grant, or so it is very important what you do with this, let's call, and I'm going to say it because I know it's how you call these minority researchers. And it's interesting to see you saying like you went from uh, um, things that were very hard to accomplish to the identifying and getting to the things that you could accomplish, and these things are great, right? And like, and I'm a kind of example of how great they are. And but I'm thinking like, isn't this even a way of solving this dilemma, Luz, of yeah, on how to balance our different instincts, is to find the things that we can really do, which goes against, maybe, which goes again back to the idea of those, right? Which is, how do you find your area of influence? How do you identify the things that you can change for better, and you know, you get happy with that,
well,
because still
in
that's
my case,
the best
in,
you can do.
yes, exactly. I think in my case, it happened when, um, you know, I knew I wanted to become a scientist at some point between fifth grade and medical school, and somewhere in there, that opened up to me, um, and then when I came here to New York, and found myself being um, the only Puerto Rican or Latina or of any kind in many of these spheres that I was working on. Especially, I was working in cell biology of the blood-brain barrier, and neuroscience in the lab. And I, at one point in during my career, I realized that the the thing that was um, supposedly a disadvantage for me, which was that English wasn't my first language, that I'm very obviously Puerto Rican, or different than most of the scientists that I was working with at the time, and people didn't really know how to deal with me and all that. But it turned out that I was able to turn that into an advantage when I started working with people like you, um, and realized that my being Puerto Rican gave me an opening to another area, which was working
Yes.
with scientists in Latin America, working with um, underrepresented minority students who wanted to go into medicine or into science. And so I turned that, which was originally a disadvantage, into an
Into a
advantage.
competitive differential.
Yes, exactly. It
That's
is. It was
great.
my unfair advantage. And so, I could have continued developing an in vitro model of the blood-brain barrier, or I could have d- done what I did, which was to follow a path where using my difference became an advantage. And so I built a career around that by now. And I think I'm very happy with the way it's gone.
And well, and I'm here to guarantee to you that you did. Luz, I think this is it's a beautiful way for us to finish in a very optimistic way. But before I let you go, I have three rapid fire questions. The first is which book you are reading right now?
I just finished Nudge, the book that I mentioned with they is a book about there's a new iteration. He says the final version of the book. Um, Richard Thaler is Nobel Prize winner in behavioral economics, and he talks about how to influence people by nudging and sludging. Uh, and so we talked about that earlier, and I think that was a very interesting book to read. I just finished that one,
Great, great
and
suggestion.
then I think the next one I'm reading is called um, it's about parenting because my daughter is a teenager and I need all the help I can get. So
Well,
it's
I
called.
finished my ones on how to deal with babies. So like yes, they really do
I can give
help.
you
You know,
mine.
like
I can give you mine. So that
wow,
book is called Thrivers by Dr. Michelle Borba, and I'm already started it, and it's very very fantastic. It's about, and it has some chapter. It's about teaching children values that help them to thrive, and at the end of each chapter it has a little bit of advice for different stages in life, so maybe it would be useful to you.
yes, definitely. I really, it was really helpful to read the Baby Whisperer. So
Uh-huh.
like and how to create a predictive environment for the babies to help them adapt. It was so useful. Like really really good. So I believe in these books. The second question is: do you take short or long lunch breaks?
Now that I've been working mostly from home, I've been taking very long. But I always go back to work later, so I work out in the mornings, and then I start my work day really after lunch. So somehow it has adjusted. I've been actually uh I I found that adjusting my space has been much more important than adjusting my time. So having two screens and having a dedicated space, because I was working, on the kitchen table and things like that. So
Uh-huh.
now, having a desk by the window with proper equipment and all that really has improved my productivity a lot. So
Yes.
it's more about the space than the time for me. You
Yeah,
know,
having things working saves a lot of time actually.
yes.
Okay, the third question is Bitcoin. Are you a believer or a non-believer?
I am a believer. Although I haven't made any money with it. I always keep buying at the wrong time.
Ah, but you have some then.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Uh, that's so interesting. Okay. I'm kind of
But I haven't
surprised.
made any money on it. So I don't take
No,
my
just
word.
hold, like don't worry, just hold. And And once I read something that like there were like 10 days in the last 10 years that if you bought Bitcoin, you were worse off than you were today. This was like maybe 2 years ago, but it was so interesting because some friends of mine said, yes, the 10 days that I bought.
Exactly. Maybe me too. I think so.
Yeah.
My
But
timing has been terrible. But I've been
but
buying all the other stocks that are doing well. So I actually bought Zoom really early, before the pandemic. As soon as I used Zoom, I thought, "Oh, this is awesome. I love this. Let me buy some of this stock and look at this." So,
yes. Okay, Luz, thank you so much for doing this. We have to do this, some other time. So
yes, yes, it's so good to see you. I'm always delighted to hear all the stuff that you're doing. I always identified that in you. I'm so happy that you're doing so well. It's great to see you.
that's great.